Previously on Flowers for Zoe, Stories for Dennis. Zoe had finally come clean. She was using street fentanyl, ran out of money, her withdrawals had started, and she didn't know what to do.
Hey guys, my name's Zoe. Thanks for joining us as we talk about my recovery journey.
I've also learned that while so many professionals care deeply and want to help, we often fall short in delivering good service.
On today's podcast, our very first show, we continue Zoe's story and get into a conversation that we eventually identify as safe places. We then get an update from Zoe on her 5-year plan.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so here we are, podcast recording number 1. And we just had a conversation and we're thinking about, where do we start? There's so many topics. There's so many things that we want to bring into this podcast. And we all might, I think we're all bringing our own personal reasons into it. That's kind of what shaped the framework, is recognizing that the lived experience just has so much to offer. The clinical experience has a lot to add to the conversation, and caregivers, this is a new and growing field of really people want to hear from caregivers. They want to hear about, how do you do this? And so in the trailer, we talk about our framework. We're going to start by building that out a little bit, inviting you into this discussion around what brought this podcast together. Do you guys remember? Do you remember where this conversation started?
I have a hard time remembering a lot of stuff from the beginning.
God, that makes so much sense, Zoe. Honestly, like when I think about what you were going through,
Yeah.
these conversations started at a time when you were in the middle of one of the worst times of your life. And some of these early conversations were Daniel and I talking about taking care of you and supporting you and figuring out how to do this better.
It's very frustrating not being able to remember things like conversations that were had and situations that came about and even arguments that I've had with people when I wasn't doing good. A lot of it's very frustrating to think about now.
Daniel, take us back to that time, that period of time. Like if you could give us a snapshot of like what home life looked like. Zoe was going through this. You and I were having regular conversations.
I remember being so happy that Zoe was actually doing this and it could actually work. And she wanted to quit. And we were happy. Laura and I were like so happy because, and it's bittersweet because we didn't experience that with Dennis. It was always a, Dennis, you got to do this. Dennis, you got to do that. Dennis, you got to do this. Well, what about this? You got to do this. And now here's Zoe saying, I want to quit. And that was refreshing for us. And we went through such a hard time with Dennis. It was almost like a little miracle happened. And that's when we started talking about, you know what, I wonder if this could turn into a book or a podcast or a TED Talk.
I remember we had so much rage. We were angry, we were grieving, we were scared, we were trying to figure out how to do this differently. And we just had so much to say about the system and how it didn't feel supportive. We had so much to say about where things went wrong. We had so much of our own battle with owning our part in it, trying to figure out whether we did or not.
What could have been better? What could have been done better? What could have been different?
Yeah. And I think that's why we kept thinking TED Talk, right? Because we've all kind of thrown that term around like, oh, let me tell you my TED Talk. You want to hear my TED Talk? Well, we had TED Talks and Daniel was writing and he was recording and he was logging because you guys were doing a taper plan.
Yeah.
So he really started that process, which turned into a book. But it all started with journaling, recording, information, tracking, monitoring, figuring things out, coming up with next steps, goals.
We had to figure out what percentage was going to be okay to taper from, what was
Mhm.
going to be too much, what was going to be not tolerable, what was going to be okay, how much was going to be okay to cut down. Like,
Mhm.
we had to figure all of that out by practice. Like, we
Yeah.
didn't know, we had to just try it and see if it worked, and if it didn't, it was pretty shitty if it didn't work out, because then I was in pain or agony or discomfort, and then we had to, every time we had to go back on something, like if we tapered too much and we had to go back and up the dose again, it was so disappointing. It felt like a failure almost.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we tried to find stuff online. We asked the doctor, we asked the pharmacists, got this little tinfoil package. It's got some powder in it. Now what? I didn't know what to do. And I remember the first time Zoe said, okay, this is it. And I said, okay. I said, so now what are you going to do? And she explained how she's going to smoke it. And I said, okay, how much are you going to smoke? And she answered, and I said, well, could you just do half of that? Thinking that if she does half, at least it's better. There's a better chance she's not going to die right here today if we cut it in half. And what a big mistake that was, because it just meant that her withdrawals were coming back sooner. So we had to figure it out, and it was really difficult to increase her dose for me. Again, I was like, oh my God, I went from absolute zero tolerance for drugs, right? So
Yeah.
I would always remind you every once in a while,
Yeah.
and it was zero tolerance
Like, there
to,
was no exception, there was no if buts, like there
yeah,
just wasn't. It was just a straight no, like that's not
straight
what you
no.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, straight no.
Well, and I'm wondering how many people out there can relate to this. Because, what you're describing, Daniel, might just sound so outrageous to so many people.
I was embarrassed to tell my NA family group what we were doing. I didn't want to
Yeah.
talk about it.
Which is
Why?
where you're supposed to be able to talk freely, but there's so many people with different outlooks on things,
Yeah,
and how they deal with a drug addict,
yeah,
or an alcoholic, either or. Like, there's so many different ways that people look at it or deal with it or handle it.
Mhm.
And people are very, very judgmental when it comes to things like this. Like,
oh
they're very,
yeah,
a lot of people are very one-sided, where there's no, you know other way of looking at things or dealing with things. It's their way or there's no way. And everybody is taught to, like Uncle Daniel said, not enable the addict. So how do you help them without enabling them? And how do you, like, there's just different ways of dealing with things. And a lot of people, I find, are so one-sided, and they don't understand that when you are one-sided like that, and you don't take a minute to understand the addict, and you're only looking at it from your point of view, which you're not an addict, it makes it so much worse. It doesn't make anything better. It doesn't help the addict want to quit. It puts a weight on them that they never had before, and they already have so much weight from being an addict. Who wants to feel even worse about it? Who wants to know that they can't turn to somebody or their family or somebody that they're supposed to be able to trust, and can't talk to them about their biggest problem in life?
Mhm.
You
yeah.
shut down in that case.
First of all, well done, Zoe. That was a beautiful rant. And I go to one of the best NA family groups. They're just amazing. They're just incredible. And yet I was still so reluctant to say it. And I remember when I finally did tell them, I interrupted the group actually and said, look, I got something to say. And I interrupted somebody else's share. And I broke down and I started to cry. And I said, I am in a bad place right now. And I am literally helping Zoe use fentanyl. I'm buying it for her. I'm cutting it for her. I'm measuring it for her. I'm sitting with her and watching her use with my 5 Narcan kits. The group, yeah. I don't know. I got the feeling the group was a little bit shocked, and I'm sure some of them wanted to say, stop doing this, but they didn't. They were extremely supportive.
Wow, what a powerful story. Wow, it just amplifies the importance of caregiver support. Support sometimes means that there are no answers. Support sometimes is just being in a space where, the group, they got you, they're listening. So, as you describe this, Zoe, what I'm hearing is like, it's not like you're having a good time. You don't
No,
like this situation that you're in.
I
And you're
hated it.
So it wasn't about enabling you to just be able to keep using.
No,
It was that there was no openness to have a conversation that would lead to figuring out how to help.
right.
And
Yeah.
it's
Nobody,
interesting because there is no other option. It is like it was not an option to not give Zoe fentanyl. That is not an option.
the fear in me that I had about, yeah, I get it. It's a horrible drug. It can kill you. At that point, when I didn't have it, the fear set in about if I don't have this, my body doesn't work right. What's going to happen if I don't
Yeah.
get it? Is it like, am I going to have heart palpitations? Is something bad going to happen to me because I can't get it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So as much as it could have hurt me doing it, I was so scared of what would have happened without it also.
The fear is real because the withdrawals are serious.
People get hospitalized, bad
Mhm.
things happen when you just stop using something that your body is so used to having.
and it's funny because I remember one of the first conversations we had with a detox nurse when we told him, okay, this is what we're doing. We're giving Zoe fentanyl. He's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. So how much should we give her? He's like, I don't know. And I said, what should we do? Should we give her fentanyl or not? And they had a blanket statement that fit everything, and that was just continue doing what you've been doing until you get in here. But they wouldn't talk about it. I guess that's a legal thing, maybe.
It's almost like it's forbidden, almost like,
It was forbidden to talk about, and that's how I
yeah,
felt at my NA family meetings too. It was forbidden. We can't talk about that because
So, yeah, you're not going to find a professional that's going to say, yeah, keep using and here's how you can taper at home. Nobody's going to take on that liability or that.
right.
Nobody wants to be, having to document that they were coaching you in how to use illegal substances, dangerous ones.
and on top of
Mhm.
that, it was street fentanyl, and nobody
Yeah.
knew what the hell was in it.
It's a real gift that you're willing to be transparent and to share your experiences. And I just want to say, like, I can hear it in your voice. This is not easy.
No,
It stirs us up. It stirs you up. It stirs me up. It impacting you, Daniel. Like we've gone through some stuff in the last few months. On the one hand, it's like, it's so good to see you here at this point. And it's so amazing that, what's happened to our family has brought us together in a way where we're just thinking about, how do we not stay quiet anymore? How do we contribute? How do we
yeah.
help make this
Oh,
different?
yeah, that's exactly how I feel, Laura. I don't want to be quiet anymore. I got so
You're
tired that
not helping
nobody.
anyone
Yeah, you're not helping anyone by being quiet.
when you're quiet. Yeah.
And there's so many questions out there that people I needed answers for, you needed answers for, Zoe needed answers for, and nobody had the answers.
Yeah.
And that was frustrating,
And that's
considering.
because nobody's talking about it. Nobody's
Yeah,
asking those questions. If you don't ask the questions, you're not going to get answers for them.
yeah,
And you're going to be stuck in a loop that is not helpful to anybody, whether you're the addict or you're somebody that's helping the addict. It's not helpful to anybody to stay quiet anymore.
yeah. And I was dumbfounded talking to the doctors or the pharmacist or the nurses how much these people didn't know about what we were going through. If I were them, one of the first things I would ask is, okay, are you using now? How much are you using? Where are you getting it from? How are you dividing it? How are you storing it? That was a conversation I couldn't have. When I tried having that conversation with the pharmacist, he didn't know. He didn't know anything. Not a thing. And I found that really surprising, considering we're in an epidemic.
Yeah.
I thought, I hate to say it this way, but I thought you guys had your shit together more, Lara.
I think I refer to this in the trailer, right? I think that anybody who gets into this work really cares deeply. They will tell you how we got here. They'll have strong opinions about what needs to happen. They care deeply about their clients, about the patients that they work with. They want things to be different. And at the same time, there's a lot that we don't do right. And I guess that's a piece of what I hope we get to unpack in this podcast is I know when we speak to our audience, there's a lot of people out there. There are people who are using right now who are trying to figure out what to do. There may be people who have gone through this and they've got things to say. There are caregivers out there that are trying to figure out how to navigate this, that are confused by the different messages that they're receiving. And there's professionals out there. I want them to hear this. I want us to get up close and personal with people's stories to understand the felt experience of what's going on. And this is why I really want us to identify, Zoe, I want to hear about what worked and what didn't work. And Daniel, as a caregiver, when you were trying to navigate the system, what worked and what didn't work? I think we have to uncover this stuff. We have to identify what is it so we can make these changes. See, that's me on my TED Talk.
It's so
no, those
true,
are all
though.
good questions. There's just so much to it, and that's the thing is, I guess when it comes down to it, the same things that might have worked for me, they might not work for somebody else. There's people out there that think the best way to do it because they can handle it that way is just to be like, okay, you know what? I'm done using and I'm just going to stop. And they go through hell for however long it takes to get through it. Some people can't do it. It wasn't just physical pain. Like I tried to explain, my body just didn't work. I couldn't use the washroom properly, like I couldn't eat. The food in general, I couldn't eat. I lived off of Gatorade for months. Your thought process doesn't work. There's just so much to it other than just physical pain. I mean, physical pain is bad, but not knowing where you are in life, not being able to focus, not being able to, just live properly and eat properly and use the bathroom properly and get up normally, and and then with depression and the OCD and anxiety, if you suffer from that too, all mixed into one, you're a fucking mess, and then you start to think like, what can I do? Can I actually do this without using? Can I live life normal again? So there's so many questions to it.
What did you think of that? Did you think you would live life normal again back then?
When I was using, I didn't know how I would feel, how I would think, how I could get back to what I knew as normalcy. Parts of me didn't think that I could ever feel good or normal again without using because of how bad I felt when I wasn't. I didn't know if I could be genuinely happy. I didn't know what made me happy because my happiness depended on using, right? If I wasn't using, I wasn't happy, no matter what was happening around me. So my happiness depended on using. So I didn't know what would make me happy anymore if I wasn't using. I didn't know how my life would be without using because I spent so much of my time either using or trying to get drugs to use to not be sick. That's what my life revolved around for so long.
When you describe that, Zoe, I just think about how hard it then must be to put something to, so let's say you're now in front of your doctor or you're reaching out for some support services. I'm just trying to imagine, like, as you've described, where you're at, did that seem doable?
No. not where I was. It definitely didn't seem doable. I mean, I knew what I wanted, you know, I knew that I had to take certain steps to at least try
Mm-hmm.
to get life back to what I wanted it to be and what it was before
Mm-hmm.
drugs entered my life. But a lot of the time I spent saying it, like, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
get sober, my life is going to be good, I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
happy, you know, I'm going to be able to wake up in the morning and smile and be able to do things without having to use first, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in order to get up. I spent so much time saying it and so much time not believing it. But I think what helped me start to believe it is that I was repetitive with it, right? I kept telling myself I can do it. You know, I will get to that point. I just have to do it. I have
Mm-hmm.
to. Like, there's no option to not do it at this point.
So there's a part of you that is a survivor, like you're driven. You keep saying to
Yeah.
yourself, I'm not going to stay on this. I'm going to get off this.
Hmm.
I think about I think about services because I work in the field of mental health substance use. And one of the things that we ask of clients, patients, is you have to want this. It's voluntary. You have to sign up for it. You have to want this. But then when you're describing how you were feeling when you were in it, I'm trying to wrap my head around when you're in that space feeling the way you're feeling or devoid of feeling because you're just so numb and and like you've described, your body's not functioning. How do you then get that message across to the professional in the room to say, hey, I do want this and I do want to sign up, but my body's not working?
Yeah.
Because sometimes what
It's
happens with
hard.
services is it looks like the person doesn't really want the help.
It looks
Yes,
like that.
it
Yeah, it
does.
looks like that with with every addict.
And
Like I
then,
said, whether it's a drug addict or an alcoholic, it's not that they don't want a good life or a happy life, but their body and their mind is so set on, but if I don't do this, how can I move? How can I get up? How can I go to work? How can I don't have the money to take off months on end of work to support my family in that situation or my situation. Yeah, my mom had my kids, but how am I supposed to get up and help myself if I can't get up and help myself?
and you have no
Right?
will to get up and help yourself.
You don't. You think of it as it's as easy as putting fentanyl on a piece of fucking tinfoil and doing it. And my whole day, I'm fine to go and do whatever I have to do, but it's not getting me anywhere in the long run. It's a right now thing. It's helping me now, but it's not helping me later. But I can get through my day. I can wake up. I can shower. There was times I didn't shower for weeks because I just couldn't. Not that I didn't want to, but I couldn't.
When we went, the first time we went into detox, that's what one of the nurses ended up saying to us. Zoe, you're going to have to want to do this. Zoe, you're going to have to want this.
Yeah.
Zoe, you got to be strong. You're going to have to want this. And instead of saying that, they should have said, Zoe, why is it that you want to live? Why is it that you want to quit? And just went right into it. Well, I want my kids back. I want my home back. Why do they have to be told you have to want to quit? No shit, you have to want to quit. And
Yeah.
that lessonry that goes on is really degrading. And what I'm beginning to think is that the more stigma there is around something, the more those people need help from outside. The more they can't help themselves. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what we would do with a cancer patient. We wouldn't expect a cancer treatment or a cancer patient to go and cure cancer themselves.
No.
Okay, you got cancer. All right, we're going to put you in this laboratory. You're going to go. You're going to have to want to do this. You're going to have to
You
cure
have to
cancer
want
yourself.
it. Like,
Have to want it. We would never say that to them, but we say that to the junkie because of that stigma that always goes back. Like, it always goes back to the person. And is that person worthy of a life? And every time they answer that call, that need that Zoe has, every time they answer it with, you're going to have to want to do this, they're basically saying you're not good enough because you don't want this enough.
I can't count how many times that I tried to do it myself. I couldn't. Does that mean I didn't want it enough? Because I'm pretty sure I wanted it more than anything.
Yeah, especially at the point where you're not even getting high from it
Yeah.
and you're just
You're
waiting to get
literally,
the pain taken away.
yeah.
Like, holy shit. I think it should be no lessons are allowed to be taught.
I feel the same way. I
Yeah,
don't think
you're not allowed to.
and in this situation, I don't think lessons help anybody. You really have to, you have to listen. You have to, you just have to gain an understanding of what people are going through.
That was my next question. I was going to ask, like what if anything did you need? And so you're saying you need somebody to listen. But what does it mean to truly listen? Like what did you want them to hear?
I didn't want, like, it's not that I wanted somebody to be like, yeah, you know what, you can use, and like that's not what I wanted to hear. I didn't expect them to be okay with what was going on, because nobody should be okay with it. But I also didn't want them to judge me or think that I was something less than I was because of it, or that, I was just a fuck up because of my choices. I just needed somebody to be there to support me and what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to help me through it, and be able to be like, if you can't do this, I'm here. I can help you do this.
Mm-hmm.
Having support is so important in a situation like this. Like, you really can't do it alone. It is one of the hardest things in life. And when you, like I said, when your mind is corroded with all this stuff of thinking, I can't do this because of this, you need another brain there to be like, you can do this. It's like you need another voice there to really believe it yourself, that you're able to get through this and be okay, because your mind is not going to tell you that 100% of the time. You're going to get into those dark holes where you're not going to think you're going to be able to do it, where you're going to fall back, where you need that voice, that little angel on your shoulder to tell you that you can do this and you can get through it.
So you're saying that and I don't know, this could be like so many different people, right? Whether it's a doctor, a nurse, a counselor, a social worker, like whoever that person is, and you've shared, they would be more helpful if they would kind of come alongside you and say, okay, I'm here to support you. This isn't about me giving you a lesson or coaching you and quizzing you on your readiness. This is about recognizing that this has been tough and you're here now wanting some support. And you're also an expert in yourself and you kind of know what you need, but you do need somebody to support you. So even when you look like you're not interested or you've fallen back, it's not that. It's that this is when you need your person to come alongside you and continue to support you and not let you go.
You just need that person that's going to be like, okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
What do you feel? When you're not able to be there to support yourself and to think positive for yourself, you have somebody else there to think positive for you and to remind you that you're so capable to do it. Don't let those little things keep you from getting better, from getting sober. Because those little things that seem little to everybody else, when you're in that position and you feel the way you feel and you're down on yourself, those little things seem so big and they seem like the biggest thing in the room.
Can you think back to some of those little things that were big?
Some days, yeah. Some days, like, I was very positive, like, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get my kids back. And then other days, me and my mom would get into it. And it felt, I just went back to that hopeless, this is never going to change. It's never going to get better.
It's a lot, isn't it, to navigate family?
Yeah.
And to navigate all the services. You've got two groups of people sometimes.
That's right. That's right. Because the addict does have to, the person with addiction does have to navigate all these different obstacle courses in order to get help. They have to do with their family, their friends, their landlord,
their job if they have one,
their job, the grocery store. I mean,
and that's what I mean. What seems like little things to regular people that without addiction, they're so huge to somebody with addiction. Like, getting up to go to work is normal. Like, people do it every day. But when you have an addiction, your life depends on using in order to do these so-called little things in life that are actually huge to us. In my situation, when I was using, because of my up and down life and the roller coaster I was on, I wouldn't be able to have a stable job. That would be next to impossible at that point. It's very different. My mom trying to explain it to my kids one time was really difficult. They're young, it's hard for them to understand addiction and stuff like that. So the only way she was able to really explain it to them was she got a water bottle and she put like a bunch of sparkles in it. She let it settle to the bottom and she asked the kids, like, can you see through the bottle? And the kids said, yeah. And then she shook it up really hard. All the sparkles were all over. And she goes, now look through it now. Can you see through it? And the kid said, no. And she's like, well, that's mommy's brain right now. She's having a really hard time navigating things and processing what she knows she should be doing. But when she gets better, everything is going to settle and her brain is going to be clear. And my kids got it like that. They understood so much more than they understood before.
That's what an interesting way to explain this to a child who's asking what's going on with mommy.
Yeah.
What brought this together? We've talked about a few different things, right? The lived experience, the just having a lot to say, wanting to be helpful, wanting to contribute to a bigger change, wanting to bring awareness. So yeah, that the question of like, what do we hope to achieve? Is that it? Is there more?
I think it just really boils down to finding a different way, a better way, a way where people feel comfortable and in talking transparent about it and asking questions that they need answers to without feeling ashamed or judged or made out to be some type of bad person when in reality they're not. People get stuck because they don't have a safe space, like we've talked about so much. They get stuck, they don't get answers to the questions that they have. They don't have people to talk to that are willing to listen and willing to be that angel on their shoulder to push them when they need that extra push, that of positivity in life. And I just think that's really where it is. What needs to be changed is people just, they need to feel comfortable in being transparent about it.
That is hard. That's so hard. It always makes me think of your dad and why he didn't share more about it. And I'm just convinced so much that there's just no way he would have shared some of the stuff that he would have had to have dealt with, his demons, in order to get to the next step of helping.
You shut down a lot when you're in that position. You tend to shut out all of the bad things, all of the things that seem too hard to deal with, whether it be grief or the backlash from your family or friends, or, you really shut down. You don't, you're not as outgoing. You tend to avoid situations, people, outings because of being ashamed. Right. So I think, as much as my dad knew he had a problem, there was still, like you said, if he opened up that can of worms, it would be opening up a shit ton of other things that he would have had to deal with and answer to. And I just don't think he wanted to.
Because he had his plan. He had a plan.
He did.
Yep. To taper down, get off the shit, and live a normal life. That was his plan.
And that's the thing is he did it multiple times.
I was going to say he was successful.
He was. It was just a roller coaster. My dad was successful in everything he did, to be honest. He was a very successful person. When he put his mind to something, he knew how to do it and he did it. He did.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, I just can't help. I think about him all the time. We all do.
Mm-hmm.
And
I say good morning to him every day and good night to him.
Yeah.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think about him like, I always love to bring him into the room. I just know that he would love this. At least I want to think he would.
I think he would.
I have a feeling that, if he was still here and this was happening, I think it would even open his mind to being a little bit more transparent, if he knew he could help other people, I think he would have a little bit of a change of heart and not be so inverted when it came to his addiction.
It's amazing how much he did help people, especially other users.
Yeah,
He was very generous.
he was when it came to money, even when it came to drugs. Like I know it's like not great to talk about, but he was very he was very giving.
Because he
If
knew.
he had, yeah,
He
he
knew
knew what it
people
felt
were
like to not
suffering.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he shared, right?
yeah. And I'm not talking like just shared, I'm talking like thousands upon thousands of dollars
Hmm.
in money, in drugs, in he just knew how it felt to not have, and to be sick, and to physically not be capable to move, get up, do things.
I'm like so convinced that the only people that really understand are other addicts. That if you take all the nurses and you take all the doctors and the methadone doctors and the pharmacists and the lack of understanding that I felt from 99% of the people, that lack of understanding can only come from another addict. That understanding of what they're going through and what's needed, and, a level of understanding that makes you almost turn off your judgmental brain and just listen.
Yeah, I think this is the growing field of peer support. It's the growing field of lived experience and peer support, and just the amount of knowledge that there is and expertise in helping, professionals that are in these roles understand the lived experience a little better, because they're experts in their field. They're experts in what they know, but they don't know everything. And so the more we can kind of shine light on those parts that we don't quite understand. And Zoe, a lot of what you shared today, I think for helping professionals, I think it's important. They might not say that they're surprised to hear anything, but I wonder if it just it's deeper validation, it's deeper empathy for the experience of what is going on. And I just can't help but to think that that's got to be helpful.
I hope so. I just, with my experience in all of this, I want to be able to help other people in a situation like this.
Okay, so there you have it. And I would also just want to add that thank you, Zoe, for sharing so openly and transparently, and for being willing to be vulnerable in these conversations, and for anybody who's listening. And I also want to acknowledge that if you've been part of listening today and you're activated by anything that you've heard, please take care of yourself. The conversation today wasn't meant to be activating or to leave you feeling worse than when you came on and decided to listen. And so if you need some extra support after hearing this, please reach out and find somebody that you can talk and get some support from.
All right. All right. So I don't know what exactly my so-called 5-year plan looks like yet, so it's kind of difficult to give you a specific update. But I do know it involves me finishing my rehab, starting school somewhere, and maybe taking an early childhood education course. But what I really want to do is take a psychology course, which could be about 4 to 5 years, depending how I go about doing it, and eventually starting a career of helping people that are in the same situations that you and I were in. I don't just want to deal with addiction. I want to help everybody in any way possible. I mean, with addiction, with depression, with anxiety, with anything hard that they're going through in life. I really want to do it, and I'm so determined to do this. If you were still here, Dad, you would be the first person that I would have helped. I miss you, and I love you.